Jean-Jacques, in 1959, your father published a book about Marcel Duchamp, who is considered as a major biography of the artist, and he was his friend. So Out There and With You is republishing the book. Why is it important?
First of all, it's not a biography, it's a monography. It's about his work, not about his life.
Okay.
Very important to make a distinction. Marcel Duchamp and my father worked on this book for 15 years. And there's a very important correspondence between them that was published by the Getty Institute in LA of this correspondence. The importance of the book itself, not according to me, but according to all the other serious historians, is that it's the first, and most people say the best, overall picture of Marcel's thinking processes, which, of course, most people don't understand. He is now an extraordinarily famous, world-famous figure. Everybody talks about Duchamp day and night, night and day, but they don't understand his thought processes, his creative process, because it starts always from language. The basis of Marcel's outlook on life is language. And to start with Rose, c'est la vie, how can you translate that into English? It's impossible, because there's a wordplay, a calembour, which you cannot translate. And all his work, all his outlook on life and society and art, etc., starts with this kind of word wizardry, or jeu de langage, as we say in French. And most people just look at his work and they say, oh, but they don't understand where that work comes from. So this is the first book, published in 1959 in Paris, in French and in English, here in Paris, that started to unveil, to take off the veil, the mask of his thinking processes. That's why it's important. And especially concerning the English-speaking world, those who do not understand enough French to get into the process itself and understand how he uses language as a sort of esquisse, as a drawing board, to then begin to conceive an artwork, very complicated artwork like Étant donné, which is in Philadelphia, or Tume, or Le Nous descendons l'escalier, or any other work, or his Apollinaire enameled, for instance. That's a perfect example of, if you don't understand the word play behind it, you just see a collage or an assemblage or a frottage or whatever without any idea of what the contents is about.
It's mute.
You know, it's obvious that you need to understand the language process. So that book is the key to Marcel's world. And that's why I said it was very important to understand that it's a monography and not a biography, because there's quite a few biographies that came out, but they're all extremely superficial. They say, oh, on this date, he went from Paris to New York or from New York to Paris and he had dinner with so-and-so. But that's just anecdotal. It doesn't go into the man's mind, you see. So this book, which is very important to understand, of course, on the cover, it said, the book is written by my father. Yeah. But in fact, they worked on it together. It's a work of collaboration. That's what makes it so important. It's not a book written on Mr. B by Mr. A. It's a work done together by Mr. A and Mr. B. That's the difference. It's an enormous difference. And there are 5 editions of it in French, which I organized after my father's death in 1986. 5. In English, there was just a very bad, cheap, ridiculous edition since 1959. So there was nothing available for the English-speaking public concerning that book. They couldn't find it. You had to go to a library to read a copy, but they didn't have it in the bookstores, you see. So this is why it's so important to have it available, because in 23 there's going to be this enormous exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art and Philadelphia. And it's very important that they have this book as a sort of key to the universe of Marcel Duchamp.
Okay.
To open the door of his mind, you see. And it took a long time. I've been trying to publish this in English for 30 years. And no publisher would touch it because it costs a lot of money. If you look at the book, you'll understand. The paper, the ink, they don't use the same paper, the same ink today, you know. It's not available and nowhere. We had to find it. It was very difficult to find that. Technically, when one image has to be lifted by the reader to see what's underneath, that's the whole idea of Marcel, is to look behind the image. It had to be printed that way, the way he wanted it printed, because he did the layout. He did la mise en page of the book. So it's, in fact, a work of collaboration between these two people, and it had to be exactly the way it was, exactly. So when I signed the contract with Hauser and Wirth, I wrote that I had the last decision to be made, the bon tiré, that it would not be printed without my approval, and it had to be exactly the copy of the original, you see. So that's something that publishers don't do anymore. It's very rare because it costs a lot of money, and that's the way it had to be. It's a work of art. You can't just do it, you know, any old way. It has to be done perfectly. And I must say that Ivan Wirth understood that, and he is probably one of the 2 or 3 most important art dealers in the world, I suppose. And he understood that the key to Marcel Duchamp's universe had to be made available to everyone. So the book is really a labor of love on my part, and on the part of Antoine Monnier, who is the responsible person for the Association Marcel Duchamp, who represents Duchamp's estate. And we got along very well with Hauser and Wirth people in Zurich, Florian Bechtold and the others. And it took 3 years to put it together because it's an enormous work, you see, to get the right paper, to get the right ink, to do many proofs, many proofs until we got it exactly perfect, you see.
Okay.
And the idea, which is a philosophical idea, in fact, and it's very difficult to talk philosophy with art dealers. I'm sure you've noticed that already. But finally, they accepted because it was in my contract. I said, we do this that way or we don't do it at all. So the idea is very simple. The cover of the supplement is the last exhibition of Marcel Duchamp, right?
Okay.
At the Givaudan Gallery. It's his hand, his cigar, but the smoke was added afterwards. So in fact, it's a work of art, okay, by Marcel Duchamp. That was the poster of his last show,
Okay.
1967, and he died in 68. So that's the cover of the supplement, not the book, the supplement.
Yes.
And the last page of the supplement is this.
And?
In other words, the book goes up into the air and evaporates like the smoke of a cigar from A to B. So in between these two images lies the enigma of Marcel Duchamp.
And so what is there in the supplement?
Well, didn't you see it?
Yes.
So there's some new analysis, new documents that were not available in 59. A text I wrote on the relationship of language concerning the maniacal obsession with wordplay. You know, the first book of Marcel's aphorisms was Rose c'est la vie, published by JLM in the 30s. And it's through the word mania that he and my father got together, because my father was a complete crazy, passionately crazy person. And every day he just talked with calembour all the time.
Even to you?
All the time. And when I was a kid, it drove me crazy. Then I began to understand why. And both of them were extremely influenced by Alphonse Allais. Alphonse Allais was a key figure in Marcel Duchamp's life, and Le Marquis de Bièvre and Jean-Paul Brisset were people who were interested in reinventing language. They didn't use language the way we are using it now. They reinvented the playfulness of language. And from there, Duchamp conceived and elaborated his calembours, which were published by JLM under the title Rose c'est la vie. So not only did he put out into the public his double, the woman, Rose c'est la vie. If you read it correctly, it's Eros, Eros c'est la vie.
Double R.
And that is another thing that you can absolutely not translate into English. And he published those extraordinary aphorisms under the name of Rose c'est la vie, not under the name of Marcel Duchamp. This is very important because concerning the supplement, you will see there's a very good translation in English of a text that was published in this book, which I think you have.
Yes.
In which my father wrote a very important essay, La dernière soirée avec Marcel Duchamp, the last evening with Marcel Duchamp. In other words, in September 68, Tini, his wife, and he, Marcel, invited his old friends to dinner. Rue Parmentier in Neuilly, where the studio, the family studio where they lived when they were in Paris. At that dinner, there was Juliet and Man Ray, and my parents, Nina and Robert Lebel, and Tini and Marcel, 6 people. And what did they talk about? They talked about language. They talked about the Marquis de Bièvre. They talked about the art of the calembour, the art of spoonerisms in English. And after dinner, Marcel took out his cigar and started smoking his famous cigar, right? And in that text, my father says he noticed something strange when Marcel was talking about Alphonse Allais and how important Alphonse Allais, the 19th century humoriste, was for him. He had a sort of melancholy look in his eye. And Marcel, according to the text, was very pale, not feeling that well. Something was wrong. And when they got up to leave, he accompanied them to the elevator, and he didn't want to close the door of the elevator, as if he didn't want them to leave, or he was telling them something. So now, this is an interpretation, because of course I wasn't there. But the facts that became known to me after allow me to do this interpretation.